What was the most creative generation of gaming? Creative as in fresh, interesting ideas, risk taken, weird and wonderful IPs, etc. If it wasn't any of the last two generations, why is that? All right, so two-part question for Mr. Thumeke. By the way, I know that was your bonus question, but I'm combining them into one. I think the most creative generation. I'm gonna go with the Super Nintendo era. We had a lot of different games back then, because games were still coming into their own. You could also make an
And
art.
also games.
Yeah, go ahead.
Also, games were cheaper to make.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
didn't need to
Yeah.
have 200 people teams to make those.
The last creative generation was probably the PS2 era because we still saw weird, crazy games and stuff. Then after that, things kind of tapered off. But it's also tied to Mr. Roman Ronan's upcoming question. But yeah, let's just answer this one first. So Adam, I'm going to go individually. Adam, what generation do you think was most creative in gaming?
It's got to go with the NES, coming from the Atari and all that shit, and then just having that experience was mind blowing. I was like, holy shit! It wasn't even just that; it was just like Mario. I was like, oh, Mario! No, it was just the fact like elevator action and all these games that I played only in arcades. Now I could play at home. This is nuts. Commando, and those type of games. And I had an Atari, and you couldn't do that shit with the stick and one button. It was a pain in the ass. So then to have the Nintendo, I felt like that was the future. I'm like, this is it. This is the ultimate thing. Well, we had Metal Gear and all that. That was never that. There was no other way to play a game like that. So for me, that's where it started. That was the beginning, the NES.
All right, Manny.
Yeah, I was gonna go with the Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna agree with Adam. I feel like the Nintendo was a part of it where it's sort of, kind of blazing the trail of what a modern game could be. And you had a lot of, obviously, you had experimentation, but you also had them people sort of figuring out what their formulas. And yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah. By the way, I should add, I wanted to go with Nintendo, but then I went with Super Nintendo just because they had more raw horsepower to actually make these things real. But I cannot disagree with the Nintendo one, because you're right. All right, Carlos, most innovative gaming generation or creative gaming generation.
I guess for me, it just depends on whether you look at it from a hardware perspective or a software perspective, or which one leans more heavily. Because if I were to say the hardware, I think I would say the maybe the Wii era, the Wii with the motion controls, PlayStation with the new disc, the Blu-ray disc, and the cell architecture, and the 360 was just basic.
It's not a whole generation, is it?
Yeah, that is actually one. One.
Well, no, I thought the question was which one. Is it a whole generation?
Well,
which generation was the most creative?
Oh, okay, yeah, cool, good catch.
And I think the games were pretty. The 360 PS3 era games are sort of the rubric of what games are right now. Like, I think that's the last generation where games actually evolved. But it's like Tony said, it's hard to argue with any of the mentions that were said earlier. NES, Super Nintendo era, because those generations literally worked from nothing.
Yeah.
To create their experiences. So, yeah, they're all good answers for me.
All right, Brett.
Okay. Fun answer, Dreamcast. Dude, that thing was out for felt like 2 weeks, and it had a microphone. It had the blueprint for the style of controllers that we still use.
Online.
It had swappable memory card.
It had Sega Channel, man. Sega Channel.
Yeah.
Online gaming. That was the first one that had it.
Yeah, but it didn't live long enough to really keep up with that pace. So I'm gonna say the PS2 Xbox, OG Xbox era. By
the way, it's the same era as a Dreamcast. By the way.
Yes,
still fits.
Okay, yeah,
it all fits.
Still fits.
Yeah, it all fits.
If it still fits, boom, that one. Because we got the blueprint for all modern shooters. I mean, y'all remember what shooters were before Halo, and then what shooters were after Halo?
Yeah. Fucking GoldenEye, that was before Halo, and then Halo was Halo after Halo. You know?
Yeah, dude,
a
like
hard drive and an Ethernet port.
Yeah, for those of you that are too young to have been there, the shooters used to be weirdly awkward and janky, and nobody managed to get them right. And then one day, as a gamer, you played Halo. Like maybe somebody just showed it to you at a friend's house, or like me, you played it at like a mall kiosk or something like that. And the weird thing was, like within 3 seconds of laying your hands on the controllers, you intuitively knew how to do everything. You're like, oh my god, why hasn't it been like this forever? It was almost like shockingly advanced. Because before, like, you're like, oh my god, I could just turn and look at the ground or look at the sky and keep moving this way. Like, this is amazing. Does anybody else remember that?
Well, that was funny because I played PC games back then, and I played Doom and Quake and all that stuff, so I was already used to that shit. Half-Life.
Yeah, Halo, it just made first-person
console
work in
gaming.
consoles. Yeah, but first-person, yeah, exactly. They were not good.
Yeah, but like, yeah, I mean, I played Doom and all that stuff. Like, I don't know why. Like, for some reason, having it on console just felt like it's just so relaxing. Like driving on a highway with extra wide lanes. You're like, oh, this is nice.
All right.
So, and you know, yeah. PlayStation 2 doesn't need to. It's self-explanatory.
Yeah, pretty much DVDs. All right, Brian, what you got?
I'd actually be in agreement with Brett. He probably stole my answers, but yeah, that generation, like the PS2, Xbox One game. Well, yeah, PS2, Xbox. Fucking Xbox name conventions. The OG Xbox.
Yeah, Xbox. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like I said, I think that's the last creative generation. That's my personal opinion. All right, Chris, what you got?
So, all right, so this it's a two-part thing, right? So, most creative library or generation.
Again, this is what the question says. It says, hold on, creative as in fresh, interesting ideas, risk-taking, weird and wonderful IPs, etc. So it could be anything. It could be a bunch of this shit or more. You know,
all
hardware,
right, well,
whatever. You know, hardware.
I would
games,
say,
yeah.
For me, that was Genesis and Super Nintendo. Like the library in there. I mean, you had games like Toe Jam and Earl and Earthworm Jim, and I played. I mean, who at Sunsoft decided, you know what, we're gonna put a possum in armor and give him a jetpack, and that's a game. Yeah. You know, they took fucking chances back then, and I won't begrudge like Dreamcast or PS2. Our PS2 library was fantastic. It was probably one of the best library of any generation.
Objectively speaking, yeah.
But like the creative stuff, I mean, like shit, when I got Genesis, I couldn't believe it. Like, you know, and I had the leap like Adam did. I always talk about going from Atari to NES and the technological leap, but that library was lacking because I disagree. Like I was always disappointed going to the arcade and playing something like you talked about POW, play Double Dragon in the arcade, and you go play the NES version, and it's like, this sucks. Or Battletoads in the arcade or whatever.
Though that was the thing.
But it wasn't the same game. It was always like a watered down experience.
I should add that during that era, Chris, that's also my answer to SNES era. That's also when CD started. Sega CD, you know, you had all these other CD kind of systems popping up at that era, you know.
Dude, they had modular system.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, 32X.
Yeah, the Genesis was modular. Yeah.
Oh man, they had a 3DO.
Yeah, the 3DO.
Dude,
it is from that generation. Yeah.
If the Tower of Power was not radical, I don't know what is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
In both senses of the word.
Yeah, that is true. Radical, dude. Yeah. So that you just reinforcing my answer. The SNES era Genesis, you know. Very innovative. It just seemed like all these companies were just going wild, doing all these things. And to the second part of the question, why do we not consider the last two generations that innovative? Because they weren't. That's why.
Well, fucking disappointing, man.
Weren't. Yeah, the worst generations, man. The PS3 era was cool. It was cool, but last gen, you know, oh man, what a fucking. There were some good games. Don't get me wrong, but what a disappointment overall. Easily the worst console generation ever. You know,
the best games were the PS3 games when it launched with the stuff from the last year. Like that should tell you something right there, man. Like it didn't even have. Even it was like, yeah, the games from last generation are the best games. We're just gonna give you those.
Yeah,
that's what started this whole fucking bullshit.
The funny thing is now the games we're playing now are from last gen, from PS4 era. It's like fuck, we can't move on.
Like Carlos said, we're getting a patch for GTA 5. GTA 5 started on PS3. That's how old it is.
Yeah. Ooh, Tumeke asked, do we feel this way because consoles started becoming more like PCs?
They started.
Oh, man.
No, man, they started following the formula.
I do agree. I see what you're saying to make it like we started getting PC bullshit problems, starting with the PS3 era. Patches, they're coming later on and shit, buggy fucking games, DLCs and shit. None of that existed back then,
Oh, whoa. Hold the fuck on a second.
What?
If we're talking about innovative, and I'm hoping Brian will back me up on this, PC is in a league of its own.
We're not talking about. We're talking about consoles. We're not going down the PC route.
No, I know. No. My point is, no, I don't think they're becoming, more standardized because they're becoming more like PCs. Actually, the opposite. PC has a lot of experimental stuff going on. So if they were being more like PCs, then that wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah,
I get the joke, but that's the real answer, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I understand some of the bullshit with PC is now coming over to consoles. Like before, everybody's consoles for the most part work the same. Now everybody's consoles have little different quirks, just like PCs have different little quirks. But it really comes down. It's hardware side. It's the games, man. The games are just not. Even though there's still good games being made, it just isn't on the level of like it was before.
But don't you think that it's an indicative problem of how big the games are expected to be?
I agree because every game needs to be open world, 100 hours long.
Money,
yeah,
exactly.
Like, Chris, you coined this. Every game has to be Applebee's, serve everybody, so every game's going to be the same.
Yeah, there's these lofty expectations of a game that does everything that every game should do, as opposed to being utterly focused and doing the one thing right.
Yeah.
You look at older games. What did they do? What did Mario do? What was he good at? He was good at jumping and running.
That was his name, Jumpman.
And that was your gameplay loop. Now Mario has to have a whole open world, and he has to have but he's still like you have these games that are trying to do so much and be so huge because of the expectations that everyone has for them. Because how do you outdo yourself?
Yeah,
well, make it even bigger, make it even shinier.
Are we counting indie games?
We can, and I'm glad you bring that up because that's where the weird sticking point comes. Like indie games are obviously innovating and stuff, and I'm just speaking for myself right now, I can't get excited about those fucking games, man.
But
I was expecting Tony to be like, well, let's be honest, no one gives a shit about those games.
No, people care about them, but I'm like,
the thing about it,
you would say,
yeah.
The thing about it with you and indie games is you are not interested in that location. Even if the game like Senua's Sacrifice is essentially an indie game, even that is sort of colored by that same sort of idea that you have of an indie game.
Well, they're almost incomplete, and like I kind of agree with that. Like one of the things I was thinking as you guys were talking is like, you know what? I have not seen a big, awesome game use a mechanic that I haven't seen before. Like it's always something that's been proven, and the proving ground seems to be indie games. Like an indie game will do something. It'll get a lot of attention for doing that, and then AAA games. Okay, AAA games go. Okay, they like that. That's become the natural evolution.
Yes, and I've said this many times. The indie games serve a purpose, right? They serve two main purposes, and you just named one of them. First main purpose is to test mechanics that big AAA games won't touch, because then if the mechanic works out, then the AAAs will get them. And the second function is games to play in between AAAs. Like they fill that void, so they're definitely worthwhile in that sense.
There was a point that the innovation point was the actual games that were being made by the bigger companies.
I agree with that. But they're not doing it anymore.
But they can't do that anymore because they
can't. That's right.
There's so much that is on top of what is expected of a game. So that's why they spread it. So they spread the peanut butter as far as they can. And because everybody likes peanut butter, they're going to keep making peanut butter.
Yeah. And Brett, I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead, bro. Say what you got to say. Say what you got to
say. They could take chances in games. They just kind of choose not to. I don't think that they should take chances on a game and make that a mechanic that the whole game leans on. But like
Well,
you can do small stuff.
Look at the Nemesis system, which is probably the biggest advancement.
That's the biggest one, and nobody ever followed up on that shit.
Well, part of it is because they own the patent to that system.
I heard they're trying to sell that now, or at least license it out. So that's good. They need to do that.
Yeah, I think the reason why we haven't seen something like the Nemesis system is because they own the patent to it, and if anybody were able to touch it, they could literally sue them.
Yeah, I think they're going to license it. But yeah, because I remember when that game first came out, we were like, "Oh shit, this is actually innovative. What the fuck's going on here?" You know, because even back then we were feeling it like, "Yo, all these games are the same now." You know,
yeah. And even that game was not like it is as much of a AAA game that game is. That game also wasn't a huge top of the food chain sort of game. It was kind of a middleware game.